Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, Season 3, Episode 21. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Well, Sylvain, we are live here. We were going to be in the Last Request Barbecue cabana outside, but it is cold and rainy,
Very
unfortunately.
cold.
So we are at the Last Request Barbecue Show dining room table here at
Well, you know what, Michael? I feel right at home here with all that weather. It feels like Halifax.
Thanks for bringing that with us, by the way. Now, we were going to do some cooking together as well for the barbecue show, but I'm not sure we're going to even be able to do that. But we're going to do some cooking tonight, so we'll get to that in a bit. What brings you to town?
Well, actually, I'm keynoting tomorrow the Canada's Food Safety Summit. We haven't gotten together in 3-4 years, so first time since COVID. So I think a lot of people are excited about that. And frankly, it's the premier summit around food safety. The who's who of food safety are going to be there tomorrow.
Who is the who's who of food safety? Obviously, there's some government type folks.
Actually, a good portion of the group are policymakers, regulators. You have the private sector also. It's a really nice combination between public and private sector together, which is really nice. And so we talk about a bunch of things, and my job, of course, as a social scientist, is to get them to think outside the box. What lies ahead? What's going to impact food safety? And of course, you have to think about artificial intelligence, the role of AI in food safety, what's going to happen there, and of course the approval of cultured meat in the U.S. What's going to happen in Canada? We've talked on this podcast about upcycled food. There's some food safety concerns there because of our will to become more sustainable.
Are you guys talking about, or do you expect to see on the agenda best before date kind of discussions?
Well, I'll be talking about it, but you understand that
those ribs, by the way, that we had today just a little earlier, they were past their best before date. Just so you know, I'm just experimenting.
It would have been a tragedy to throw them away.
They were, right?
Oh my goodness! Yeah. I'll tell you in a couple of hours how I feel.
Well, shout out to DeBreton Ribs. They were DeBreton Organic St. Louis cut
Vincent,
ribs.
And Vincent is really very active on social media, he's got a great company going. And he actually was once our guest on the podcast. So
that's right, and continue to follow him on social media. Now, this is going to be one of our solo episodes. Actually, we were trying to think this morning how long it had been since we did a solo episode. So we got lots to talk about. So we won't have a guest this episode. We got lots of great guests coming up in the weeks to follow for the rest of our season. And like we did in the prior seasons, we'll kind of wrap it up around the summer, and then we'll have bonus episodes from Seattle. That's right. So we'll be together again.
It's in less than a month.
It's in less than a month. In fact, we'll be together at Seattle May 9th to 11th, Food Innovation Show. Now, you're both on a panel and presenting, I think, right?
That's right.
Tell me about your panel a bit, because one of our recent guests I saw is now on your panel.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we're talking. It's a panel I set up. Typically, Paul, Ace, and I we actually have a chat about a very informal chat about the future of food. We talk about trends and things like that. Now we're actually bringing in another generation. So I'm from another generation. I'm an academic. He's former VP of Loblaw.
Yep.
And so now we're actually bringing Jake.
A whole other Good luck controlling him. That's going to be a pile of fun.
I've never met him in person, but he was just a hoot on our podcast. And I immediately reached out to him and say, "Hey, listen, do you want to join this panel I'm setting up?" And he accepted immediately. So I'm looking forward to that. And on the 11th, I'm actually presenting on my own. A bunch of data that we have about trends and you saw. I mean, last year you were there. I started Seattle, and absolutely, we're going to be talking about all sorts of things. There's lots going on in the food industry, and people are asking questions about what's next and how is food inflation impacting behavior and things like that. So those are the things that we'll be talking about.
Well, hopefully you'll have time to join us in our podcast studio, because we're the official podcast studio.
I know
of Seattle. So it's a great format this year for those who are going to be there, and for those who are not. Be sure to check out the show note. We'll put in some links, because you and I have got our fishbowl, so to speak, and then we're setting it up so that people can sit around us on the outside and listen in which will be fun/scary/ whatever it's going to be. But that's going to be probably.
Well, it's going to be nice because last year when we had a really nice booth, but nobody knew what was going on there. We were just looking at each other, and we were getting people in and out. And now this time, people can actually just stand and listen to the conversation live.
Yeah, it's going to be great. All right, well, let's jump into the news. I was aghast to read 18,000, almost 20,000 dairy cows died in Texas.
I know.
At an explosion or fire. Now, I had two thoughts about that. Oh, my God. 20,000 deaths of dairy cows. And then how big is this farm? It was on the South Fork Dairy in Texas.
Yeah.
My God, it wasn't the entire group. Like, they have a lot of dairy cows on that farm.
I think about 1,000 survived. Yeah, so it's not uncommon in Texas to see dairy farms like that. But if you want to put things into perspective,
18,000.
It would be the amount of cows you would find in New Brunswick and PI probably together combined.
So. You think of these large processing farms, if I can call them that, but I had no idea that there would be 20,000 cows. Man,
and that's the legacy of supply management. That's the advantage that we have. We're not forcing dairy farms to be gigantic like in Texas. The reason why they have 18,000 dairy cows is to build economies of scale, which is not necessarily a priority here in Canada as a result of supply management. So that is one. So you're not just putting every eggs in one basket. Right. So if you do have an explosion, and we've seen fires in Canada, dairy farms have actually burned. Sure. Yeah. It does happen in Canada as well, but you lose 60, 80, 100 cows, not 18,000.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. So speaking of dairy cows and speaking of China, news out last week that they have cloned 3 super cows that will be producing each 18 tons of milk or 100 tons of milk in their lifetimes. What do you make of cloned dairy cows?
It's a touchy subject. I know China doesn't shy away from that kind of science. But in Canada, of course, there are severe restrictions. So a lot of people are looking at China with some concerns because a lot of things can happen. I mean, you look at Canada. I mean, with genetically modified salmon, people went berserk.
Right.
And when you're talking about cloning
dairy cows, my God.
And I mean, you do. From an animal welfare perspective, there's a lot of trial and error that goes on there, and so it's not necessarily great. So, I'm not sure Canadians are comfortable with the concept, but China, of course, the focus is food security. They want to actually feed themselves, and so they're just testing the boundaries of science.
Back to Quebec, Oméal, closing a plant.
Oméal,
I can never pronounce that right. Oméal.
Yeah.
Hey, I got it.
Oh, no, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
The way you say it is like honey,
Oméal.
Oh, honey. Oméal.
Oméal.
It's Olimel.
Okay. Olimel.
That's right.
Olimel. All right. For those listeners, I got a little bit of liquid courage here on the table, so maybe that's helping me. Anyway, on a serious note, close the plant. Probably about 1,000 jobs. We've had Yannick on the podcast before, and you've talked about the need to restructure what he's got in terms of facilities. Is that how you view the lens you view this through? Oh, yeah. I wasn't surprised by the news. In fact, I believe we may actually see another closure. I mean, Vallée-Jonction, it's 1,000 people in the city of 2,000 people. Sure.
So you probably know what's going to happen there. I mean,
like Smith Falls when the chocolate plant, there's no cannabis plant opening up in the...
No. And so there's certainly some concerns there. I think overall, Olimel is making the right decisions. It has no choice. Really, Yannick inherited a house of cards. I mean, it's really... That's really the reality. Régent Nadeau, under Régent Nadeau, the former CEO, he bought a lot of things: Blue Sky, Pinty's, F. Ménard, and Ange Gardien. And
I got to think they're going to spin Pinty's. Would be somebody. would be somewhere in some deck somewhere that
I don't know.
It doesn't seem like a strategic business for them. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure, but I suspect that the team over at Limel will again look at their books, and frankly, I think they're going to have to rebuild. They're going to have to build a new state-of-the-art facility somewhere in Quebec to replicate somewhat what Maple Leaf did.
Right.
Maple Leaf was inefficient for a long time. They closed a bunch of plants, and they now capitalized. They've capitalized on two plants, one in Hamilton and one in London.
So there's no escaping the need to continue to innovate and update your technology and all processing, right? So you're just going to get left behind, and the economics will not be on your side.
Exactly.
The Competition Bureau has just announced its 23-24 guidelines in an annual plan. Have you seen this? Just came out.
No, I didn't.
So it just came out, and it is called Driving Competition Forward for All Canadians. So it just published this morning, so you were probably on the plane. And they set forward that they had 4 focuses, 2023-24. You haven't always been that positive about some of the work they do, particularly the pace of the work they do.
Yep.
Number 1, crack down on anti-competitive practices in areas that have greatest impact for affordability of daily life for Canadians. Number 2, strengthen the capacity to take timely enforcement action. Timely enforcement action in both traditional and digital marketplaces. Number 3, publishing the findings of the Bureau's retail grocery market study, which I believe you're testifying for or participating in.
We met already, and it's supposed to be released in June.
And then just generally supporting the government's focus on competition. So what do you make of this? Is that a new statement for them, that they actually think that they're going to move a little faster? Is that
when I met them a couple of weeks ago, it became quite clear to me that they think they have a lot of power. But it's like the Senate of Canada. They have a lot of power. The Senate has a lot of power. It just doesn't use it all that much, all that often.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem with the Competition Bureau. And so I think it's a bit of an acknowledgement saying, you know what, from now on, we're going to start looking at the tools that we have, and we're going to start using them a little bit more often, which is, so it's a change of tone. I suspect that some industry folks may not be overly comfortable. And I think things have been really cozy for everyone, I think. And I mean, it's just not normal to see a bread investigation go on for 8 years.
It is kind of normal for them, though. I mean, the real estate investigation of the Toronto took 7.5 years. So
it's just not. It's not. I don't think it's acceptable, and I think the Canadians aren't willing to accept that either. So I think they're just acknowledging that they need to be they need to become a highly performing agency. Yeah.
In other news, McDonald's is updating their Big Mac. Did you hear about this?
I did see that.
Now, did you...
Were you surprised? Are you shocked? Are you disappointed?
Well, first of all, I wanted to make sure it was still sticking to truth. Now, can you say the Big Mac song very quickly? What's in the Big Mac?
Big Mac, filet of fish, quarter pound, French fries, ice coke, thick shakes, sundaes, and apple pies.
That's very good. I like 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Well, because you're English. That's I can't go there.
So what are they doing? So they are adding in upgrading the core item. The buns will be softer.
Yes.
The cheese gooier. And the onions will be added to the patties right on the grill. Like most people wouldn't put out a press release about this stuff, but and more Big Mac sauce.
I thought it was a bit technical, to be honest. And my guess is that it's a bit of a throwback. They're trying to get back to the taste of the 80s because I actually think that hamburgers today at McDonald's do taste different than 20, 30 years ago. Do you think?
I haven't had a hamburger from McDonald's or from anywhere in 20 years, so I wouldn't know.
Oh, really?
Right? I don't eat.
It's different, and it certainly doesn't look like the picture. McDonald's is the king of consistency. So this is, to me, this is a big deal for them. And Ziggy's our guest this week.
Ziggy's our guest this week.
Yeah, that's right.
Hold on, get a quick picture.
Yeah.
Hold on. Come on, Ziggy.
You want to say something? Huh? You want to say something? You want to talk about dog food?
So, big day in the cannabis culture. It's a high holiday, so to speak.
That's right.
For the cannabis culture. Now, it's been a bit of a bong show in cannabis for the past couple of years. What's your assessment? I mean, early on in our podcast, in fact, before we had our podcast together, I was interviewing on some of these topics around cannabis for the Voice of Retail, and the production side, and then there's the retail side. So on the production side, there was some great hope that Canada could have another crop, basically.
Yep.
And it would, everyone would get behind the fact that we can export the wisdom of many years of learnings. Where do you see the assessment today? I mean, it's not spoken of very often.
No.
Any thoughts on
not right now?
On cannabis as a crop or as a agricultural product?
Well, the Cannabis Act is being reviewed right now, and so they're out there consulting different folks, including us, and so we've been invited to talk to Health Canada about what we believe should be in the act, and and
that's a standard process for any act. Is usually you write into it
every 5 years.
Every whatever number of years, there's a standard built in, must be reviewed. So there's not some trigger mechanism that said, "Oops, we got to review something." It's just kind of a process, right?
That's right. Yeah. So, the food guide is actually, it's going to be 5 years old soon, and they've promised to review it. But we've seen what has happened with the food guide. They often review it every 7, 8, 10 years or so. So the act, I was surprised that the Health Canada actually said that it was going to go through a review, and it's doing that with edibles in particular, which I think is where the potential is for demand. I mean, I've said that many times. The human body is not designed to inhale drugs. It's designed to eat, to ingest drugs. And it's right now the act is so restrictive, and that's why there's no demand. And frankly, it actually allowed, a lot of people actually believe that it allowed the black market to expand even more. Yeah. So, and because the black market has the ability to adapt, increase quality, and keep the same price, while the price of cannabis is quite expensive compared to the black market right now.
Yeah, it's actually it's a longer subject. It's almost a podcast on its own. We should get somebody from the industry on as a guest and kind of chat through both the retail and the LP, the licensed producer side of it.
We met a lot of people when things were ongoing, like we're ramping up before the burst. I think it'd be great to actually have someone talk about where are we at now today.
A lot of consolidation, both on the LP. Who was it? Tilray bought EXO, and then a lot of retail consolidation. Okay, well let's put a pin in that one and revisit that one. Now, Earth Day's coming up, April 22nd. Is there a point to Earth Day anymore?
I don't know. I mean, Earth Day started in 1970.
Really?
It was a different time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 1970. People had boats as cars. I mean, and people just
now they have F-150s though. I don't think it's changed that much.
No. It's we have to address it, and I know that a lot of people are concerned about some of the policies that are being implemented to try to change behavior and things like that. But last week, actually, the National Inventory Commission, looking at gas emissions, have actually released results for Canada for 2021. And gas emissions are still going up 1.8%, but the trajectory has actually dropped.
Tapered off.
Yeah. So of course, Minister Guilbeault is saying that our policies are helping, but there was COVID. I mean, people aren't necessarily driving as much anymore, and so that's really impacting. But when you look at agriculture and agri-food particularly, gas emissions are still going up. And so I don't know what's going on there, but I've always believed that in agriculture, I think the carbon tax is a good initiative. It's an important policy. But in food, we have to think about this a little bit differently. We may compromise our own food security and understanding exactly how the carbon tax can impact the architecture of our food industry. I think that nobody has given it a lot of thought.
Well, apparently the minister hasn't given it a lot of thought, who voted against the carbon tax.
The minister herself,
the carbon tax not being put on the farmers.
Bill C-234 is a step in a good direction, basically exempting farmers of the carbon tax. But I actually think that processors should actually be exempt as well.
Yeah.
But should tar sands be exempted? I don't think so. I mean,
it's complicated. It's complicated.
Very complicated.
Speaking of complicated, public service strike. So there's a pending strike with the public service. That means agriculture inspections and other things. Any thoughts on how the agricultural sector could be impacted?
Well, by the time that the podcast is aired, we may be on strike because it starts. It could start on Wednesday, and so. When you look at some of the things that perhaps Agriculture Canada won't be able to do on strike, there's not a whole lot of important things. I mean, it may be a nuisance for some people. It may be an inconvenience.
Plant inspection, right? So
no, actually, that's another union.
Oh,
yeah, the CFIA is not going to be impacted at all.
Oh,
so that was my number one concern. But they're actually negotiating right now, and they are threatening to strike. But if there is a strike on Wednesday, the CFIA won't be impacted yet. So that's good news for everyone. And they actually have over 3,500 inspectors out there.
I was going to say, they got a large, I mean, some people say not large enough, but they have a large contingent of folks in plants every day across the country, right? Coast to coast.
Exactly. And I've always, I know that some people don't think that we have enough inspectors. I always ask the same question. How many inspectors do we need? And nobody knows.
Yeah.
That's another debate, but essentially, I don't think the CFI will be compromised by the strike, at least not yet.
Okay, well, that's good news.
It is, yeah.
On less positive news, we've been talking about agriculture in the context of the Ukraine war, in the context of Europe over many, many months, unfortunately, so to speak, on the podcast. Now, there's some concerns from some of the other countries about the Ukrainian product and its price and flooding the market. Are we in trouble here?
No, Hungary and Poland, they have concerns about. This is really odd because,
and it's funny because Poland's a big ally of the Ukraine, right? They're the first ones in, giving them tanks.
Now they are.
Yeah.
I mean, Poland supports Ukraine.
Yes.
When it is invaded by Russia.
Right. Well, of course, yeah, but they're invaded by Russia, so you'd think they'd be on.
So they support Ukraine.
Yeah.
And but what is going on right now is in breach of EU trade policies. You can't really issue embargoes on other members. That's basically what's going on right now. And their justification is that they want to protect their farmers because Ukraine is actually flooding Poland and Hungary with grains. And then, so it's really bizarre because we were concerned that the market would not have enough grains. Now there's like too much in certain parts.
Is that because it's not being transported off site enough? Like, why would it be flooding? Because it's not making its way around the world?
Well, it's just because there was a glut, and all of a sudden they're trying to basically bring more grains to the market, and Poland and Hungary are just close by, and so
complex.
Honestly, I'm not sure Hungary and Poland have thought that one through.
Yeah,
like, to be honest, because like I said, I've actually met some. I think it was a couple of weeks after the invasion at Seattle, actually. I met some people from the Polish embassy, and they said, well, so do you support Ukraine? And their response was, well, we do now. So I understood. I understood the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last couple of things. So you got a new book coming out, which is pretty imminent. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's coming out in September. I submitted the manuscript a couple of weeks ago. It's on food geopolitics. So going back to Ukraine, of course, I tried in the book. I look at all four corners of the world, understanding how power, politics, and influence can actually impact trades around the world, essentially. And so that's the premise of the book, and understanding what lies ahead with demographics, populations, immigration. Canada is not in a good place, I don't think.
Oh, really? That's your assessment in the book, and then.
because it's actually right next to the United States, and the United States influence is being lessened and lessened. I don't know if you saw in Brazil now. Brazil is going to start trading without the American dollar. China is starting to build allies to get countries to not use the American dollar. Now, is the world going to be de-dollarized in some way? I don't think we're there yet, but we're seeing signs that China really wants to disrupt the financial world, because the financial world right now, because the American dollar is the currency of reference, the Americans can't be dethroned.
Yeah,
and
their economy. There's an article in the Economist this week about how strong their economy is, so that they compare some of the poorest states in the U.S. and compare them to European states and say they're even farther ahead. Even the poorest states are more productive and more affluent than some of the poorer states in Europe. So it's a funny thing, because between COVID, conspiracy, and all the stuff that goes on over there, like their economy and their productivity is skyrocketing. Like their economy is very strong.
Oh no, absolutely, and they became strong after the Second World War. Essentially because the whole world decided that they needed consistency, so they created the IMF, the World Bank, and of course
and the Marshall Plan.
Everyone actually agreed that the dollar of reference, or the currency of reference, should be the American dollar, and that really helped the American economy, and it still does today. And now, for the first time since 1948, it's being challenged somewhat, and China is starting to make noise. I mean, China is really quite influential. I mean, most people don't know that 85% of the entire world has not issued any sanctions against Russia. Like in terms of populace?
Yeah, sure, because India and China didn't. That's couple of billion people. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
And Africa, most of Africa.
So I know that in Canada, it's incredibly unpopular to say that we're not supporting Ukraine, and I think we should support the Ukraine because it was invaded. It was just criminal what happened and what is going on right now. Yeah, absolutely. But the reality from a geopolitics perspective is that 85% of the world have not done anything about it. And that's a big signal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Last thing, let's stick back to agriculture and back to America. So I was reading articles about the irony, of course, in California. They're dry and drought for years, and now the water is epic. Like floods from the water, and now the snow cap is melting from all that snow.
Yeah.
Are you worried about the cost of that? Must be starting to factor into your model for 2020.
Oh yeah,
right?
It's already impacting our access to produce, and prices have gone up. We're seeing and we saw CPI for March. We're still seeing some movement with vegetables and fruits. So those categories are costing more, not unsurprisingly, and that's really because of California. California's forcing importers in Canada to look elsewhere to buy different products.
Well, I guess I could look to our friend Barry Murchie from
that's right,
Good Leaf Farms. I'm a big fan now. We're going to have that for dinner tonight. I got all of his stuff now. I found it. I found it in my local grocer. The shelf above, like out of sight, actually a little higher.
Okay.
Than their house greens.
I'll let Barry know.
I never had looked up. Interestingly enough,
don't look up.
Well, look up actually, because that's where Barry's stuff, and the family's really enjoying it. All right, well, that's a wrap on our solo episode.
Yes,
great to see you in person.
Good to see you
here in the corporate living room, I guess we could say, as we're on mic. Once again, we'll be together again very soon in May at Cial.
Yeah.
And then until then, I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, podcaster, keynote speaker, and you are?
I'm the Proof Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
All right, everybody, be safe, travel well. If you're going to be in Toronto at Cial, stop by, wave, say hi, do all those great things, and you'll see Sylvain. Oh, I forgot. We'll see you now on television regularly in the province, La Belle Province.
Yeah,
right?
Starting next week, I'll be a columnist or a guest.
Contributor.
A contributor on the number one morning show in Quebec called Salut Bonjour, which is, I've been on the show many times, just not as a regular, guest.
So in case you don't get enough of Sylvain Charlebois, now you can see him on a regular basis.
Français.
Every Thursday, right? Every Thursday?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so look for that. And until next week, our great cavalcade of guests continues. Until then, safe travels and have a great day.
Take care.